body is a prison, we think it's an absolute right to let women access the key to escape. The proposition case is a case against beauty standards, not a case about how women best deal with those standards. The debate is not about the commercialization of surgery and all the impacts that stem from that. It is specifically about the idea of a surgery in and of itself, and that's the reason why proposition has already lost. I want to start with some framing and rebuttal, and I'll go into two arguments. Firstly, why feminists should not principally oppose this, and secondly, on alienating women. Firstly, in terms of framing, I want to make three things very clear because I don't think proposition does this. Firstly, what does oppose mean? I think it means that you have to shame women, make the women who were thinking about doing such procedures feel guilty to the point that they are likely to overturn and counteract that decision. If it is true that this is something that is really normalized in certain societies, then this messaging has to be extremely strong, and therefore proposition has to contend with the trade-off of shaming women or making them feel guilty about making this choice. Secondly, what does the feminist movement currently look like? This is crucial characterization, because proposition does not really picture what feminists look like currently. I think there's an overwhelming narrative of choice feminism that exists in a lot of these movements. The view that even conservative choices or choices that may be influenced by the patriarchy are choices that are still empowering, and that means that you can include everyone and increase the participation of all types of women in your group. Lastly and finally, what we do under opposition. We could still provide information about these industries, and this is really crucial. Note that the industry marketing and opposing the industry, or opposing the surgery in itself, are two separate issues. We can still run things like forums, campaigns that educate women on the risks that you may have while not necessarily opposing by saying you should never do this in any circumstance. So this maximizes the positive consent that women have. Proposition needs to prove the exclusivity here. Why is it that we need to oppose the entire notion of these vanity procedures compared to the few bad apples that may exist that make women feel insecure? Because the debate, again, is not about the commercialization of surgery. It is about specifically the idea behind those surgeries. Moving on to rebuttal, the first thing that we get is this idea that the industry is unjust because they exploit women's insecurities. Note that this is the meta of this debate, right? The industry and the women's insecurities that exist unfortunately do not change. Saying that you advocate for body positivity doesn't mean that everyone will suddenly accept body positivity as a norm, especially since feminism isn't that popular in certain contexts. That just proves to you that the strategy of their case is already wrong. But apart from that, they brought me two harms. The first thing they say is that this creates a commodification of women's bodies, which is their principle. But I would say that commodification is not perpetuated through these procedures specifically. Commodification exists generally already as a standard when pernicious advertising exists or when there's male gaze in the media. So we can still counter that under our side through our own positive messaging. And I think there's just a problem-solution mismatch when dealing with this. The second thing that they say is that, well, the satisfaction you get from such procedures is short-term. But even if the satisfaction of this is short-term, I'm unclear as to why that is a harm as opposed to maybe an uncertain benefit. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with changing your body. We change our appearance all the time through makeup, hairstyle, procedures like this, through exercising to lose weight, for example. And the satisfaction that we get from these things may also be short-term if we're just keeping up with the trends. That doesn't make it any less fulfilling or make it any less legitimate. Note that again, proposition contradicts their own case. If it is true that you're only likely to be getting a lip filler, then there's no massive harm being done to you, insofar as these procedures are safe because they have been normalized and because they've been accessible. That just proves to you that there's really no harm to these procedures. Firstly then, why is it principally wrong for feminists to take a post? There are several reasons to know. The first is that we just need to have a respect for the women's choice currently. This form of procedure is a way of reclaiming what was once imposed upon you by the patriarchy. It's an act of reclamation, traditional ideals of beauty and making it your own. We would go as far to say that beauty or prioritizing vanity is a legitimate choice for some women because people have their own perception of what leads them to lead a better life. There's nothing distinguishing this from makeup, from working hard, because all these things drive you to have a better life and access your conception of happiness. We realize that both choices, like makeup, may take a toll on you financially, and both choices are conforming to some extent into the patriarchy. But in these cases, using this as a procedure means that your appearance can actually become an extension of who you are because you're projecting your self-confidence or the image that you want to exude to the world. This is the likely case for a lot of women, right? Because many women can make informed choices about these when they know about the risk, etc. They believe that this is the image of themselves that they really want to show everyone. They want to feel beautiful, and they believe that this makes their lives better. I think it's important to allow women an access to that. But let's deal with the absolute worst case, that somehow women are all coerced into taking such procedures. There are two extra reasons why this is okay. Firstly, the feminist movement should be a safe space for women regardless of preference. And this is parallel to the idea that we accept conservative women into our movement, even though they might conform to things such as being a housewife. There's quite outdated notions of what women should do. Because even if it is a manufactured choice, it is what makes them fulfilled. Secondly, the alternatives are much worse in terms of choice. The alternative on proposition is that you are stuck in your own body. You are stuck in the feeling of always feeling discontent. You do not provide women a way out, essentially, and we don't think you should let women be subject to that discrimination based on beauty if it exists, because you're subject to the same mental pressures and the mental stresses. So just because you have body positivity and you can claim that as an advertising, that does not mean all women will suddenly accept it. How do you weigh this particular argument on choice? Firstly, when proposition says we're not banning anything, so women still have the choice, that is absolute nonsense. Women might still opt into surgery under their side, but the extra harm is that women feel guilty about this. They feel that they're not a true woman for wanting to have cosmetic surgery. They believe their agency is being taken away from them because the feminist movement is telling them, oh, you are always being coerced into this. You can never make a legitimate choice. You're making women substantially less happier under their side of the house. Second, even if these influences other women to make that choice, there are external factors that have already affected this anyway, like the influence of friends, family, society. So one woman making this choice is not going to drive like every other single woman into doing that same choice. Like this is perpetuated by the patriarchy regardless, and therefore taking that choice to opt out of it and to conform is naturally an okay thing to do. Secondly then, why does this alienate women from the feminist movement? Unfortunately, proposition takes a narrow view of this debate. Like this debate is an actor debate specifically, and therefore you need to analyze the interest of this actor. Broadly, we think that the interest of the feminist movement right now is to increase participation and being inclusive. They want to enter into the mainstream discussion, so you need things like celebrities, you need prominent people to endorse your movement. Why does this stance of opposing plastic surgery alienate women? I think these aliens a bunch of women who are already undergoing or will undergo these procedures because you're attaching shame and stigma towards them. You're labeling them as anti-feminist when the general stance of the feminist movement is to say these procedures are necessarily anti-feminist, necessarily anti-women. So the women who do want to opt into such procedures have to believe that they themselves are anti-feminist. Even if the messaging is not that vitriolic, I think people will still pick up on the undertones because they realize, well, feminism just doesn't support this in any circumstance. What is the impact of this? Firstly, I think it makes these women feel insecure, that they are now no longer wanting to reach out to feminist spaces because of that insecurity, because they feel that they're no longer a feminist if they take up these procedures or even consider these procedures in the first place. They're less likely to converse about the harms of these procedures. If it is always portrayed as bad, they're less likely to seek out for counseling and help regarding these procedures. Secondly, there's less popular support from celebrities that may have undergone these surgeries themselves. You're starting up controversy from the people who necessarily believe in choice feminism. Note that this flips the two conclusions from proposition. Firstly, we give more guidance to women. We make sure they don't fall to predatory advertising, but that requires them to actually reach out to the feminist movement and feel like they won't be judged when they are deciding whether or not to take this surgery. Second, we reduce criticism from the vast majority of women who do believe in choice feminism, who are likely westernized individuals where this debate takes place. Because we empower women, we are very proud to oppose.